As a coach, I'm not just dedicated to working on helping my clients advance their ambitions and aspirations. I also help them when they find themselves in a rut. A few of my clients right now are feeling as if they've been running endless sprints since the pandemic hit. Now, what should have been a short sprint somehow turned into a marathon, which is being run at the speed of a sprint. So can you imagine? That is not sustainable. Oh, and definitely not healthy. The thing is, if you run too fast, too hard, for too long, you will stop. But it's probably not how you want it to stop. So rather than being forced to stop when your body and mind gives up, what choices and changes could you make today to sustain whatever race that you're running? So one of the questions that I'd like to ask my clients who find themselves in that situation is, what is their utmost priority? What is most important? Do you know the answer I get? Everything. Everything is important. I hope you can see the problem with that thinking. God forbid you can't work anymore because your body has completely shut down. There is no way you could do everything. Now, what would you tell someone else as the most essential piece that must be picked up, right? So you will end up prioritizing. And in fact, if you have more than one priority, you really don't have a priority. The word wasn't even meant to have a plural version of it. At least that's my understanding. It was supposed to be a singular word, one priority. I call it the Keystone Goal, something that I learned from Dr. Benjamin Hardy, who is a fantastic organizational psychologist and a performance coach. And when you think about a Keystone Goal, if you think of an arch, the arch is really being held together with this one stone right in the middle of the arch, such that if that falls down, the whole thing will collapse. The idea is, what is that one thing that is more important than anything else? What is that one thing that if you got that done today, or this week, or this quarter, or this year, this would be a fantastic day, quarter, or the year. That requires obviously some discretion and judgment, but guess what? You're the most qualified person to make that decision. The irony, however, is we can have these rational conversations, right? In coaching. Sometimes it still goes back to the client really just blowing steam off about just feeling overwhelmed and feeling like almost nothing is in their control and there's just so much to do. Have you ever experienced that? Yeah, most of us have at one time or another. But what makes it a problem when that is a consistent feeling, when it is becoming a pattern that is depleting you? So some of these clients, they know. They actually use words like burnout. They say we are burnt out. They know they need to stop, and yet they don't say no. They keep on taking extra work. Why is that? Is it a lack of discipline? No, not really. They're actually incredibly high performers. People are used to seeing them take on all these things. As you say, you want something done, give it to a busy person. But if we step back and look at, okay, here is a really accomplished person who understands. This is not something I or somebody else is telling them, who understands and is feeling completely overwhelmed and exhausted. What they want, at least what they say they want, is to not take on any extra work. So why is it that they can't make that change? There are two researchers by the name of Keegan and Leahy who came up with this concept about we have developed immune systems. Immune systems that disallow us to change. So what do I mean by that? Borrowing from this brilliant strategy, I believe my clients, okay? I believe them when they say they need a break. They can't continue to work the way they're working right now. They're capable, they're smart people, so why can't they make that change? Because they have other competing commitments. So on one hand, when my client says, you know what? I don't want to take on extra work. What I really want is to say that I have no capacity because I'm so exhausted. There is not a single thing more that I can do. And even though they know that, they take more work on. What does that say? Why do they do the opposite of what they were intending to do? Because they have another commitment. You know what that commitment is? One of many possible things. One, my clients don't want to feel that they can't take more on, even though they know they can't take more on. It's a psychological thing. At the same time, it's also about perceptions. They don't want to be perceived as lazy or weak or someone who turns work down, who doesn't take initiative. These are all the things they don't want people to perceive. Add even more commitments they have. They also want to be seen as the hardest working, smartest overachiever. So if we boil it down, we have 3 things here. They say they want to not take any extra work on. Okay. They also don't want people to perceive them as lazy and not wanting to help out and take on that additional work. Okay. And they want to be perceived as someone who is a team player and an overachiever and super hard worker. So which of these things do they really want? Whichever commitment matters the most to you, that wins the competition. And do you know how I or anyone outside can tell you which commitment is winning? How you or my clients can see what commitment is winning? Just look at the results. It makes me sad when people are stuck in the cycle of, I really, really want to make that change, but I'm not able to. Please, somebody help. And you know what? That is less about the victim mentality. They really are not identifying what else they are committed to. So one of my biggest invitations in that situation is, can you identify your competing commitments? And that awareness to know that I am the one who's standing in my way. Because guess what? We know how work works. There will always be more stuff to do. Your boss, your boss's boss, everybody and their mother would be very happy if you can take more on. You know, they probably would even appreciate that you do that. But is that sustainable? Only you can decide. You are the one who has to uphold the boundaries. There is this beautiful quote, and it took me a while to understand it, which says, wherever you go, there you are. Wherever you go, there you are. You may be wondering that I'm burnt out because I'm in an environment that is way too chaotic. You may think I am feeling burnt out because I'm working with people that are toxic or not appreciative. Or I'm working for a leader who has no semblance of a life and they expect everybody else to continue to take more and more on. It is possible all of those things are true. If you feel so depleted and you decide to leave that organization or that team and you join a different team, I hope you reflect on what behaviors and patterns will you bring to that new role or that new context. If you are someone who continues to be committed to being perceived as an overachiever, someone who can go without breaking down, someone who's such a robust team player that they will take on all the projects that other people are not able to take on. If that is a commitment you continue to hold, would you be surprised if the pattern repeats itself in the new role? So I hope one of the messages that is landing for you with this conversation is recognizing your patterns, especially questioning and recognizing your competing commitments. If you're not getting what you want, you're not able to make the change you want, what are you upholding? A different commitment. And how do you get out of it? Well, Keegan and Leahy had a solution for that as well. What they suggested is if you can identify what that competing commitment is, let's look at what are the assumptions you're making. Because it's possible if my competing commitment in that example is that I don't want to be perceived as weak. Perhaps the assumption I'm making is that if I didn't take on extra work, people will judge me. It could hinder my opportunities for future upward mobility in the organization. Okay, now if my competing commitment was that I want to be perceived as an overachiever, I want to be perceived as the most hardworking person on the team, well, then the assumption I'm making is that that really helps me stand out, that makes me feel much more self-worth, and that it probably will help me today and in the future for any aspirational goals that I have. So does that mean if somebody were doing an excellent job with responsibilities that they had, and they had the wisdom to not run the marathon at the speed of a sprint race, You're telling me that person will not be recognized and will not have success or opportunities for success? So once you identify your competing commitments and you look at the assumptions you're making, test those assumptions out. Is it true, or is it a narrative that you have created for yourself? And there are many ways to test those assumptions. It's basically like experimenting, right? So one of the things that Keegan and Leahy use, they use the acronym SMART, test, S for safe, M for modest, A actionable, R research-based, and T for testing your assumption. What they're inviting us to do is, let's not do anything reckless that could actually harm you or your career. So start in small, moderate. So it's not to say that you're going to say no to every single project that came your way, but what if you identify that what this extra work is really not moving the needle forward? There's no strategic value to investing there, or that you would be spreading yourself thin. The progress you can make, the contributions you can make by walking 10 steps in one direction versus 10 steps in 10 directions is a very compelling case for take on the most important stuff, do an amazing job with that, right? It also makes it more actionable, which is the A of SMART. And we're not coming up with this test in isolation. We're really prioritizing, gathering information. So the intention is, okay, this is what I believe. Do I know anyone who has a semblance of a life who is not run to the ground and they are thriving? Whether they have gotten the promotions, whether they have the peace, whether they have been able to hold their job. Can you look for evidence in your environment that challenges or confirms your assumptions? And then based on that information that you collect, then you can make a decision of whether your assumption is upheld or not. And in the worst case scenario of the clients who are experiencing burnout, if they do check their assumptions and they find that they are in an environment where they will not be appreciated, where they will not be respected, and there is a risk to their jobs or especially promotions in the future, okay, so perhaps their assumptions were correct, which fed their competing commitment. But then the decision is, okay, so if the environment is not going to change, what will give? Because as I said before, if you run too fast, too hard, for too long, you will stop. Your body will stop, your mind will stop. You may not want to, and it actually usually doesn't look pretty. It is difficult. It is possible to crawl out of burnout. Prevention is always better than cure, right? So in that case, find another team, find another project, find another organization where you will uphold your values. You will work in an environment that actually values you and does not make you feel forced. But at the same time, wherever you go, there you are. So take a look at how will you challenge your competing commitments, and what is the commitment that you really want to honor. Your results will indicate what commitments matter to you. And guess what? Your family, your friends, they will appreciate when there is that congruence between what you say, which is, I want to have some work-life balance or semblance of sanity without being worked to the ground, and you walking the talk by taking actions that are aligned with what you say. The last thing I will add is, if despite all this work, you feel, I don't know, it sounds all great. Yes, sure, I may have these competing commitments, and you may or may not want to check your assumptions. I hope you do, because there's no other way that you can challenge these competing commitments, because they're usually not grounded in reality. But if you do all that and you feel that your job, your position, your organization, your industry is such that there is no option, that is the norm. You must go, go, go. And if you achieve just one more goal, eventually you'll be able to prove your worth and feel like you're making a contribution. That is a very common situation of grounding your self-worth and self-esteem over too heavily in work. It's also a sign of imposter, I wouldn't call it syndrome, but phenomena, where you feel that I will be found out. So if you find that after everything you just this is not the time, or you couldn't stop even though you want to. I hope you will check also that assumption of what is the source of these beliefs and how are you reinforcing them in your life. Ultimately, as a coach, I can only make invitations, right? So one of the things I would invite you and all my clients who are in that difficult situation to do is identify what's within their control. And one thing that is always within our control is our own sense making of the situations that we find ourselves in. And when you make sense or craft meaning out of what is happening or the choices that you're making, you have the opportunity, not only you do, but you have the opportunity to either change that situation, change how you think about that situation, or reframe that situation so that the narrative is not depleting you further. My hope for you is that your work is fulfilling, it's a source of joy and pride, and you do meaningful work without feeling that you have no energy left for all the other aspects of your life. If you find yourself using terms like burnout, please seek out clinical support. There are professionals who are committed to helping people either reduce the symptoms, manage them, or explore options that could help you get rid of burnout. But as I said, prevention is better than cure. If you can commit to daily rest, and what I mean by daily rest is actual disconnection from work, not waiting for the holiday once or twice a year, not waiting for the weekend, but every single day, even if you do that just for 1 hour. I know that's ridiculous. I can't believe I'm saying 1 hour. But even if you disconnect it for just 1 hour, you don't check your emails, you don't take calls or text messages, you don't think about the work, that is a reset for your body. You may not realize, and I have lots of high-performing clients who are also type A. And they're like, you know what? I love the go, go, go. Love the adrenaline. But guess what happens when you don't disconnect? Your parasympathetic nervous system does not activate, which means that you may not think you're stressed, but physically the amount of adrenaline and cortisol, which is our stress hormone, that is in your body is negatively impacting you. So the biggest gift you can give yourself is A, understand and be honest about where you are. Second, question, what are all your competing commitments? How are you making the decisions that you're making? What are the assumptions these commitments are grounded in? Assumptions, test them, change them. If there is enough data to say, you know what, that is not true. I can still be valued and feel really good about my contributions without working myself to the ground. That is an incredibly empowering feeling. And guess what? As a leader, you're also role modeling it for the rest of your people. So the impact is much greater. And then, of course, the most important people in your life, your family. Hopefully, what you're doing is creating rituals that not only sustain your leadership journey, but actually bring your best self to the most important people in your life. I hope you found this content valuable. I hope that you will be inspired to take those breaks, to truly commit to disconnecting every single day for whatever short time you can, so that you can run that race for the longest, most sustainable time and experience joy out of it. Stay tuned. If you haven't subscribed, please like and subscribe to my channel, and I will continue to share more nuggets that lead to an enriched leadership experience. Thank you for watching.